Today, we'll meet our new POA Board President for 2025, and he will bring us up to date on changing leadership and current projects in the village. It's coming right now, so stay tuned. Welcome to the Tellico Village Quarterly POA Board Update. I'm your host, Carla Johnson, and I'm here today with your 2025 Board President, John Orr. Welcome, John, and thank you for joining us today.
Thanks. It's a pleasure to be here.
We're here to review topics from the first quarter of this year. But tell our viewers a little bit more about yourself. From where and when did you move to Tellico Village, and what leisure activities do you enjoy here in the village?
Well, my wife, Kirsten, and I moved to the village in 2020. We came from a small town in North Georgia, Dahlonega, Georgia, and we were semi-retired there for about 4 years. And I say semi-retired because I actually was an adjunct professor at the university there in their business school. But we were looking for a more active community. After 4 years in a small town, we were looking for stuff to do. So while we looked at a number of communities around the southeast, we obviously settled on Tellico Village. And like most people, what drew us here was the leisure activities, the golfing, the boating, and the recreation activities, and most importantly, the active nature of the community with clubs for every interest.
It sounds like you've found plenty of things to do that you were looking for, right?
Oh yeah, never a dull moment.
So do you have any career experience that you feel like helps you with your role as on the board?
I like to think so. I spent over 30 years in senior leadership roles in both finance and operations in companies as small as $5 million and as large as $2 billion. So I've got a pretty wide breadth of experience there. But more importantly, what I think is I've been a lifelong entrepreneur. So I've bought my first company at age 25, and my wife and I have either bought or started multiple companies throughout the years. And I feel that experience has given me a broader knowledge of all aspects of what it takes to run a business and be successful.
So what led you to run for the POA board and ultimately to serve as president, particularly during a time when Tellico Village is navigating the challenges that come with age and the rapid growth of our community?
What led me to run is pretty much the same for everyone that's on the board. There were a couple things that I felt I could help improve in the POA. But being from an outside looking in, I knew I didn't have all the information. So I decided to start on the FAC and was appointed January of 21.
And the FAC is the Financial Advisory Committee.
Yes, Finance Advisory Committee. And after 2 years on the FAC, I had a much broader understanding of the complexities and challenges and opportunities of the POA, and decided at that point to run for the board. And as I highlighted in my run for the board, and quite frequently since then, one of those issues that prompted me to get involved was around food service. I felt strongly that food service should be run in-house as opposed to outsourced. I felt we had a much greater financial opportunity running it in-house. And the other one, not uncommon, is that I felt we could run more efficiently as a POA. So that's what I focused a lot of my board time driving.
And tell us about now you're serving as president on the POA board. How's that going?
Good. I've decided to volunteer to be president this year because I felt I could provide the leadership to help navigate the POA through the many challenges that it's facing. Our growth is plateauing after 35 years, and we just got off of a 4-year stint of very accelerated growth. And that has moved our expected build-out date from roughly 2035 to maybe 2027, 2028. So we go from building 350 plus houses a year over the last 4 years to maybe 150 this year and declining over the next several years. So the POA will need to transition out of our growth mode much quicker and address our infrastructure needs much sooner than we thought just a couple years ago.
So I appreciate your leadership in that, John, and thank you for being willing to serve and for all you do to help make Tellico Village the best it can be.
Thanks.
Let's dive right into our first quarter topics. In 2024, we had 2 openings on the POA board. The election was held in November with 2 new members elected. Those new members are Michael Lackey and Joel Reed. They were officially seated during your December meeting, and that was followed by the election of 2025 officers. Our viewers can see the current board members and officers displayed now on the screen. And the board is also conducting a search for a new leader for our POA management. Where are you in that process?
Well, as you know, Matt Benoit is serving as our interim general manager. Matt has been with the POA for a little over 2 years, but has over 20 years of city management experience. In his short tenure with the POA, he did a great job of turning around public works. He put the right managers in place and put the proper policies and procedures in place, and in doing so, reduced the public works budget by over $700,000 last year. Matt volunteered to serve as the interim leader as long as it takes to name a permanent leader. Given Matt's familiarity with the POA and his leadership experience, he's been able to get up to speed quickly and is already having a very positive impact. The board decided that before initiating a search, we would need to define what we would be looking for in a new leader. As I mentioned, we are in a different place than we were 3 years ago. So we created a board subcommittee, and they are hard to work on identifying the desired skills and competencies of that person, what required experience and education we're looking for, and ultimately we'll be developing an updated job description, an interview guide, and rating criteria as we go through the interview process. Once that work is done, we will decide on the interview process, the timing, as well as who will be involved. But since we have such competent leadership in place with Matt and an engaged board, we do not want to rush the process. Matt is doing a fantastic job, and we've got a lot of projects underway, but we will be working through the process of naming a permanent leader in the coming months.
So we'll follow up with you next quarter and keep our viewers informed as the board continues their search for a new POA leader. Of course, one of the first things the board does each year is to establish goals for the year. Let's start with a review of the board's 2024 goals and accomplishments.
Okay, 24 may have been the first year that we had such specific and in many cases stretch goals for the organization as a total. We had both financial and non-financial goals. I'll highlight a few here today. The first and potentially most important goal was to contribute at least $10 million to our reserves this year or last year. And on that one, the actual result was closer to 12.5 million, so we exceeded it handily. The whole organization worked hard to achieve it. One of the biggest contributors was our continuous improvement efforts. And that really leads me to what was our second big financial goal, which was to achieve at least $500,000 of continuous improvement savings. The organization really came through and achieved over $956,000 of savings last year. So the change we made last year was that these savings needed to be validated by the Finance Advisory Committee to make sure that it was truly cost out of the organization, not just cost avoidance. The next goal that was a big one for last year was integrating food service into the POA. As most people know, we brought food service in-house January of '24. The goal was to integrate the operations into the POA and achieve sales growth of over 10% versus the prior year. They actually achieved 11.1%, so they exceeded that goal, but we had a secondary goal on food service, which was to reduce their overall subsidy from what was $600,000 in '23 to a budget of $300,000 in '24. On this one, we didn't quite get there. We ended the year at about $475,000, but it still was a 43% reduction from the prior year, so it was a good performance there as well.
Still moving in the right direction.
Correct. And the last goal I would like to highlight was we had a big project to develop business plans for all departments in the POA. And in many cases, the directors and managers have never developed business plans before, so we had to do a fair amount of training throughout the year. We had multiple reviews and iterations of a lot of plans, but in the end, we ended up with very good plans that we will continue to build on this year.
Great. So, and I'm sure the board wants to keep that momentum going. As you just said, you want to build on those achievements this year. So tell us about the board goals now for 2025.
Again, this year we've got very specific and in some cases stretch goals. On the financial side of it, the goal is to deliver $12 million of net surplus to our reserves. And we have a budget to do that. So as long as we're on budget, we should achieve that goal. Again, we will look for at least $500,000 of continuous improvement savings. And on the operational excellence side, we're looking to develop a balanced scorecard for the organization. And we touched on that in our last board meeting, a little bit of a presentation around what a balanced scorecard is, but in brief, it is, as it sounds, a scorecard of how you keep track of your progress toward your goals, both financial, non-financial, forward-looking, backward-looking things that you're watching, and you can grade your performance, the organization's performance on a monthly basis. So that's what we're talking about, balance. It's not just focused on a couple of financial goals like meeting budget. It's a lot of different factors that determine success of an organization. We're also going to identify some key performance indicators. These are 2 or 3 key metrics that each department can have that anybody from the outside could look in and determine whether you're succeeding or not. So we're working on what those key indicators will be for each department, and we'll do our best to report on those on a regular basis. And the other big one is successfully completing our phase 1 business system implementation. This has been a project that's been on the books since I've moved to Tellico Village. We're finally looking to get it across the goal line at the end of this year. And of course, we've got our capital projects management. We're rebuilding Tanassi, and we've got water and wastewater projects that are big capital projects we're managing.
Village property owners always appreciated being informed about the financial health of the village. How's our latest checkup?
Overall, the village is probably in the best financial health it has ever been in. We ended the year with $27 million of reserves. Of course, it is important to note that about $5 million of that is from the insurance proceeds from the Tanassi fire. Now, to some, our reserve balance may seem like a lot, but we have a lot of capital costs to fund in the next several years, not the least of which is rebuilding Tanassi. Also, the village is over 35 years old, and just like a house, there are improvement needs that will need to be addressed in the coming years. But unlike homeowners and even municipalities, our borrowing ability is limited, as our governing documents prevent us from pledging any assets as collateral for a loan. However, we continue to explore and investigate loan options as another way to help offset our cash flow needs over the next few years.
So with full build-out imminent and how that's going to impact our revenue streams, what can we do as a village and what is the board doing to prepare for that time?
Well, as we reach full build-out, what that will essentially mean is that any revenue growth in the village will be limited essentially to inflation or the rate of inflation. But the reality is most of that revenue growth will be eaten up by cost inflation as well. So this reality, which has been contemplated for years, has led us to do our first reserve study a little over 2 years ago. The result of that initial reserve study was the realization for some and the confirmation for others that our reserves were woefully underfunded, given that we have over $350 million of assets that we have to maintain and eventually someday replace. We have made great strides in the last couple of years to build our reserves, because at the beginning of 2020 we had just over $2 million in reserves, but at the end of 24 we had $22 million in our reserves.
All right, but you mentioned some major projects ahead, which brings us to our next topic, water and sewer infrastructure. We've covered this during our last few board updates. What are the latest developments?
Well, as a review, there has been study and planning work being done on our water and wastewater infrastructure since 2019. The work has resulted in the need for improvement to that infrastructure. Early last year, there was some financial analysis done that identified projected costs of these urgent upgrades, given our accelerated growth, at $37 million. Given our reserves at the time, the projected timing of these projects, it was determined that we had a cash flow issue over the next couple of years. And that's what led us to the $80 water sewer asset infrastructure fee. Well, a year has passed since that analysis was done, and we are further along in our planning for these projects, resulting in a couple of the projects being altered or even delayed. One such delay is the wastewater storage tank. In the fourth quarter of last year, it was decided to delay the installation of the tank until we could determine if the effectiveness of a more aggressive I&I mitigation plan would be effective. I&I, for those that aren't familiar, is inflow and infiltration of rainwater into our wastewater system. So we started this mitigation plan beginning of this year, running a pilot study in Kahiti to determine if rainwater is entering from tank lids at individual properties. By the end of Q1, we had flow meters installed at various places in Kahiti, and every property in Kahiti had been inspected, and corrections are being made as we speak to identified potential problem areas with those tanks.
So after all the inspections are done throughout the village, what is the hope for what you find out with I&I?
Well, the hope is that the risers will reduce our I&I enough so that we don't need to have a wastewater storage tank, and ultimately could save $6 to $8 million on that project. We won't know until we've completed enough corrections and get enough flow data to determine whether we've had enough of an impact. But we're also working with our utility partners, LUB and TAS, to see if their water and wastewater improvement plans will help us and also help, reduce the need for some of our infrastructure upgrades.
So in addition to that wastewater storage tank, there are other elements of the plan. One of those was an upgrade to the main pump station on Sequoia Road. Where is that project?
Yeah, the one project that has progressed the furthest is that upgrade to the main pump station. That project has been fully engineered, and is currently out to bid for construction. So we should have firm construction cost in the next month or two, and we're looking to start that as soon as the contractor can start it.
And as we get more of those firm costs, how is that impacting the plan for funding the projects?
Well, given the changes that I mentioned already, and the fact that we've made a lot of progress to be more efficient in our operations, we've asked the FAC, the Finance Advisory Committee, to revisit their financial and cash flow analysis sooner than what we had promised, which was mid-year in preparation for our planning cycle. The FAC is committed to have that update ready for the board by the June board meeting. I also mentioned earlier that we did a reserve study in 2022. The firm we hired had a big job getting its arms around all of our assets in the village. And we're talking about buildings, big and small, everything from the yacht club to the restrooms on the golf courses, all these individual buildings. We've got 100+ miles of roads, 100+ miles of water and sewer infrastructure, hundreds and hundreds of pieces of equipment. So there was a lot for them to get their arms around, and quite frankly, prior management was less than helpful providing the data they needed. So what we got was a report that was directionally correct, but it lacked some of the specificity that we were looking for. So we have talked about some of the shortfalls probably over the last 2 years in many board meetings of that report. And so again, to address some of those shortfalls, we've asked for that reserve analysis to be updated in the second quarter of this year.
All right. And I know your goal, as always, has been to provide the most reliable water and wastewater infrastructure in the most cost-effective way. So that's what you continue to work toward, and I've heard you say that before, so we look forward to that. I know it's a big, big project, and we appreciate all the time you guys are spending to make sure we get it right. Our viewers are encouraged to visit the POA website at tellicovillagepoa.org/tap to view the videos and review all the information available regarding the water and sewer projects. And it's very exciting to see the Tanassi Clubhouse coming to life, as Phase 1 of the project, which includes the 2 new parking lots, is nearing completion. Give us an update on that.
Well, Carla, as you know, we hired an experienced project manager in Q4, and Scott McCrae is doing a great job of overseeing the project. And we are nearing the end of Phase 1. All the site work is essentially done now. And the project is on schedule and on budget. Most importantly, we're still looking for a facility opening timeframe as we originally targeted at Q1 of 26.
2 elements that many property owners would like to see included at Tanassi are golf simulator bays and an outdoor fireplace for the patio lounge area. Timeless Tellico Foundation is providing opportunities to help make these amenity enhancements a reality. If you are interested in learning more about the foundation or to donate to the projects, please visit timelesstellico.com. And remember, golf operations at Tanassi will not be interrupted during the construction project, but expect some changes as we go through the process, like auto and golf cart traffic flows. Please continue to book tee times at Tanassi during construction. The construction project managers and golf maintenance staff are working to ensure that the golf experience maintains our high standards with very few disruptions. Updates will be sent out by the golf department, published in the Telegram, and posted to the POA website. To receive the most up-to-date information, I encourage you to sign up for the Tellico Village Golf mailing list if you haven't already. Just call any of our pro shops or email Tanassi head golf professional Lucas Forstrom and ask to be added to the mailing list. His email address is lforstrom@tvpoa.org. And that's a wrap for our first quarter update. Thank you, John, for taking the time to be here and to keep our viewers informed about board activities. Hopefully your first update was fairly painless.
Yeah, it was fun.
All right, we'll see you here next time. Thank you for tuning in to your POA Board Update. And remember, you can watch the live stream of board meetings as they happen or on demand later. Just visit the TVN YouTube channel under Live, and there you will find videos of past board and town hall meetings. Before we go, I do want to remind you that whenever you need help or answers, please submit a request to the Help Spot. It's your go-to spot for Tellico Village questions, help, and more. It can be found on the bottom of each page of the website at tellicovillagepoa.org or at tvpoahelpspot.com. For emergencies, Public Works is available 24 hours per day at 865-458-4522. Be sure to join us again next quarter for more timely topics. As always, thank you for watching Tellico Village Network. We'll see you next time.